And shall we kind of change mode then and start listening to our elected officials?
Yes, if I might tee this up. So as I mentioned during my budget message this morning, my intent was to have a different process this year, one I've been working on for quite a few years, but the pandemic kind of slowed down my plans. And that is to have myself as the budget officer, the finance director, present the entire organization's budget rather than having individual presentations by departments and offices as we have in the past. I think it's gone pretty well today, but we can debrief when it's over. The elected officials told me they were concerned that they did not have a chance to address the budget committee. They are independently elected. They are accountable to the voters and the public on how they spend their money. I was persuaded by their discussion, so I did invite them to have comments before you. So there's an order that I have in your script, and so they're going to have a chance to come before you and share anything they wish about their budget that they'd like to share with the committee. Sheriff Brandenburg will be first, followed by Clerk McMullen, District Attorney Wentworth, Assessor Rueda, Treasurer Nava, and Judge Brisbane. And what we don't finish today, we can carry over to tomorrow morning as well. As you know, the sheriff disagrees with my proposed budget, and here's her opportunity to give her perspective and her opinion, and certainly want her the opportunity to do that.
And thank you for mentioning that if we need to carry it over, we do have tomorrow morning. We are limited time-wise this afternoon. If we begin now, let's roughly say it's 2 o'clock, we have about 2.5 hours, I think it is. So we should be finished here in order to keep our other commitments and have a 6 p.m. public discussion. We need to be finished in this room today at about 5:30.
No later than 5 o'clock. 4:30.
No later than 4:30. Yes, 4:30. So we have 2.5 hours.
Commissioner Savas.
Commissioner Savas.
I just want to make sure that we have it's a two-way conversation. Maybe there's opportunity for questions. Could I defer my questions till now?
Yes.
When the sheriff. Okay.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, it's not like public testimony where we're just taking in information. Thank you. All right. Do you want to queue up anything else before we start that, or just start calling them up to the dais?
Sheriff Brandenburg and her team would be first.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah, Clerk McMullen, would you like to come forward, please?
Clerk McMullen, welcome to the process. We are happy to see you in that seat. So, thank you. Yeah, it is important that whoever's speaking speak directly into the microphone.
There we go. Now I'm on.
Very closely. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Parks, and thank you to the Budget Committee. This is an important event, and I especially want to thank the public members of the Budget Committee for participating and volunteering your time and being part of this public decision-making process. I want to thank our County Budget Officer, Gary Schmidt, and the Finance team for their work putting together a comprehensive proposed budget for our county. And I'm here to share some top-level and structural details of the clerk's office, as well as concerns I have when it comes to moving forward and how my budget was constructed and how it was made to fit into the greater county budget this year. Clerk to the board, would you put up the slides, please? Thank you. So that is on tab 23-1 for those of you following along in your big notebooks there. So as an independently elected clerk in a constitutional county, my authority is vested in the voters who hold me accountable to the duties of the office, as well as detailed sections of our Oregon revised statute. And that includes ORS 246-200, which states that the county clerk is to conduct elections, and ORS 246-250, which the county clerk may pay expenses and employ personnel, procure equipment, supplies, facilities as the clerk considers necessary to administer election laws. As a clerk, I oversee 3 divisions, and that's elections, recording, and records management. And I want to take the time to introduce my lead staff. I have Michael Newgard here, who is our management analyst, and he also does our budget and does the property valuation appeals, which is currently called BOPTA. I have Tiffany Staton, who is our recording manager. I have Carol Hopkins, our records management manager, and then Ann Burke-Jones, our elections manager. So I want to thank them for being here with me because they are an invaluable and critical part of my team. Excuse me. So I believe that an organization's budget is a reflection of its values and its priorities. My proposed budget, as part of the county whole, is an expression of my department's values, priorities, and public service ethics. So at the county clerk's office, we are rebuilding public trust through good and responsive government. We are conducting accurate, transparent, and inclusive elections. We are providing document recording and marriage license services, and we are focused on excellent customer service, both internally and externally, and records management. The services that my divisions provide are 100% mandated services, and the Records Management Division provides internal services to all other county departments and was partially part of allocated costs to other departments. So in Records Management, just under $400,000 of $724,000, or 55%, was allocated costs to other departments. This department is also partly funded by revenue generated through passport services, recorded documents, etc. And because the Records Management Division received allocated costs to provide internal services, the whole of my department was not charged allocated costs. I've brought this issue up on 3 different times with the budget team, and we ended on that it was an oversight and that will be billed allocated costs in future fiscal years. I'm expecting those to be between $600,000 to $800,000, but I don't think I'm going to know until next spring when they're assigned to my department. If we could move to slide 2. So I want to celebrate our major accomplishments of my divisions this last fiscal year, in particular what we have accomplished since I took office in January. The election division is fully staffed. In fact, all of my divisions are currently 100% staffed. We've had support from the Equity and Inclusion Office in making our first bilingual hire and providing interpretation services in all divisions for the first time. This allows us to follow federal and state ADA and language access laws. In recording, we're going to issue more than 1,500 marriage licenses for happy couples this year. And in records management, we're supporting our internal county departments and responding to public records requests through research and retrieval. And Carol's team has processed more than 4,400 passport applications for both Clackamas County residents and beyond. And we also heard nearly 200 property value appeals in the past year. So providing county residents a way to appeal their property values. So if we move to the next slide, which is our results measures. So I reviewed our performance Clackamas results measures and made changes so that they're more transparent to the public and accurately reflected our division performance. So we're now tracking and reporting our overall election cost per eligible voter, as well as our election personnel cost per 1,000 ballots processed. We're focused on preventing costly errors in planning and initiation stages of each election so that we can reduce our overall costs and allow us to fund efforts that make our elections more transparent, more inclusive, and ensure accuracy. We're increasing accountability to the public and other stakeholders in the recording division. You might note that during the pandemic, we had significant staffing challenges, and staff became severely behind in indexing documents. I've worked closely with our recording manager to set goals, create an improvement plan, and set a public results measure so that we can be completely caught up with indexing our important recorded documents by spring of 2024. And so you'll see that there in the recording results measure. And then records management continues to shine in providing public records management services to our internal departments. If you want to go ahead and move to slide 4. As I've mentioned, all of our services that we provide are mandated services at federal, state, and local levels, from conducting elections, keeping the public record, to hearing property tax appeals. And we have a direct alignment with the Board of County Commissioners' priorities. And I think it's very straightforward, and that is accountable government. That is what the clerk's office is all about. So if you move to slide 5, this is an overall look at our revenue and expenses. Our budgeted revenue is $4.47 million, primarily from recording fees, marriage and wedding fees, and a carryover from the fiscal 21-22 in the clerk's office revenue, and recovering allowed costs from jurisdictions to conduct their elections. The expenses is also $4.47 million, and that's primarily from personnel services, and the material and services, that includes ballots, vendor services, and equipments. We also, if you look there, I think it's not the special payments, but the, I don't think it's on that slide, but we have a $600,000 capital outlay to replace our aging ballot sorter. So you want to move to the next slide for me? So this is the department budget summary by fund. You'll see that the largest share of my budget, 54%, continues to be administrating elections for the people of Clackamas County. And we have just over 308,000 registered voters with 5 permanent FTE in that division. This is an average of 61,600 registered voters per employee, and this is significantly higher than average for large counties in Oregon. The average is 46,914. So if we were to be average with other large counties, we would need to add another 1.5 FTE to have adequate staff. This fiscal year includes the November 2023 election. It also includes the May presidential primary election, as well as any special elections we might have. The November presidential election, which is usually our most expensive, is going to be part of our next fiscal year 24-25 budget. If you want to move to slide 7. This is a summary of revenue and expenses, and I just want you to look at that last line, revenue less expenses row at the bottom. So fiscal year 2021, we had a banner year in recording revenue, and the department was able to return almost $3 million back to the general fund. In fiscal year 21-22, the office also came out on top with 1.18 million more revenues. However, that 1.18 million in consultation with the budget officer and the finance department has been returned to the clerk's office so that we can balance our fiscal year 22-23 and our projected fiscal year 23-24 budgets, as recording revenue continues to be below what is needed to cover the expense of conducting elections. Did you want me to address questions now? Or finish?
Good. I'm okay for just letting you finish.
Okay, thank you. So you can also see that $600,000 capital outlay for the mail ballot sorter in here. And then finally, there's a $20,000 grant that we received from the State Elections Division to update our elections computers in May. And then we received an additional $10,000 grant through Homeland Security, which actually came through disaster management, that we used this spring to protect some of our physical election spaces. So if you go to skip past this last slide and go to the next one. So this is our significant policy and or financial issues. I've talked about most of them already. I do want to highlight that our recording revenue is largely dependent on the activity in the county housing market. And because of the continued decreased housing activity, both in sales and refinances, we continue to have some of the lowest recorded revenue in recent history. This may be a slight improvement on the horizon, but it's not going to bring us to our fiscal 2021 rates in the foreseeable future. I follow closely different forecasts, including like the Mortgage Bankers Association Finance and Economic Forecasts, which recently showed that we will be improving because our CPI is going down from a 7.1 to what we're looking at the end of this next fiscal year as a 2.9. And that at the end of the same fiscal year, we should be at a 5.3% for mortgage rates. So it's going to come down a bit, but it's definitely not going to return to that fiscal year 2021 that we saw. Unemployment rates, federal interest rates, federal debt ceiling, all are local economic indicators that factor into the housing and market activity, in which our revenue is really dependent on. Ultimately, I want to share that no department is an island, and that includes the county clerk's office. My office and my 3 divisions are part of the greater whole that is our Clackamas County. The workforce and other reductions laid out this morning by the budget officer will directly affect my office, as it will every other department that provides services directly or indirectly to the public. So I've worked closely with the Equity and Inclusion Office as part of their retention task force. And this task force will allow departments to prevent staff turnover and to welcome and keep the talented employees we spend so much time and money to recruit and train. My department also works closely with public and government affairs to communicate with the public and build trust through press releases, social media, and website information. This is a core function of my department that I rely on our eternal partners here in the county to help me provide. Ultimately, I agree with our budget officer, Schmidt, that we are one county and we have one budget. My divisions rely on each of the central services presented this morning, from County Council to HR, to facilities, to the Equity Inclusion Office, to technical services, so that we can meet our department goals and best serve the public and our internal partners. In an effort of transparency, accuracy, and accountability to the Budget Committee, I would advise maybe two things moving forward. That the lack of an allocation to my department makes it hard for me to understand how we're paying for these critical services that our county partners provide my department. And I also want to highlight that we'll not have this extra revenue to pull from previous years that we pulled into this fiscal year. We won't have it for fiscal year 24-25 as we move into our most expensive election, the November presidential election. And I don't believe that the clerk's office will be able to be self-funded department next year. Despite how I would like it to be so, I don't have control over the revenue and the recording. The proposed methodology, I don't believe, is sustainable for the coming years. I do want to thank each of you for your service to the community and your participation in our local decision-making. I'd love to answer questions. I hope I didn't get too far into the weeds, but I'm excited to talk to you further about the budget.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Smith and then Commissioner Savis.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate your statement in that you don't think your revenue is sustainable over so many years, and that's something that we can work on together to make sure you do have a sustainable revenue. This department has always given money back, Gary, to the general fund year after year after year, and poses two questions for me. Excuse me, last year, during COVID, when interest rates were down, we saw a record amount of recordings because people were refinancing. We don't see that now because people are not refinancing because interest rates are up. Has that affected your revenues?
Yeah, that's a direct impact upon our revenue.
And about what percentage revenue are you down because of that? Can anybody guess? 45%, 30%?
About 60.
60? 60%. Well, then it'd be nice if interest rates would go back down and people would be buying more houses and refinancing their loans. Thank you for that. Secondly, you say, did I hear the number right, $660,000 for a new ballot sorter?
600,000 is what.
600?
Yeah. we're
Okay,
looking
and what will
into.
that do for you?
So it's going to replace our aging ballot sorter that currently processes about half the capacity of what we need it to. That ballot sorter is also at the end of its life, and what this machine does is it runs the ballots. We run the ballots through. It takes an image of the signature, and that's how we compare signatures on records. So it actually sees every ballot twice. I don't know if Ann Burke-Jones would like to add anything to our need for the replacement.
And before you answer that, because previously at the clerk's office, there was a physical person that would do signature verifications. Does this replace that?
It doesn't replace it, it's part of the whole. So we have automatic signature verification, which is a program that then helps us decide the ones that match exactly, and then we have election workers that work together to do the signature verification. But either way, at the beginning, we run the ballot through this ballot sorter so that you can take an image of that ballot.
And just to provide a little bit of details, like Clerk McMullen said, our existing mail ballot sorter was purchased in March of 2016 when the county had 242,000 registered voters. So now we're well over 300,000. We've seen a lot of growth, and we need to expand the capacity in order to accept these ballots timely. As Clerk said, we have to receive these ballots in through the machine twice. The first time to take an image to facilitate that signature verification, the second time to outstack any of those issues that we need to do to contact voters. Both of those things need to happen before we can report returns to the Secretary of State's office. So in order to provide timely results, it's critical that we expand this service.
I'm not disputing the machine. I mean, I'm happy that you're doing it. What I want to know is, because you said you needed another FTE over time, because based on our percentage of population, we are actually down one FTE comparatively to other populations of this size. So with the purchase of this ballot machine, does that alleviate can anybody answer me the use of an FTE, or can that person be put on other duties? I understand that signatures come through that the machine can't read, and then you need to go back and verify. I'm not talking about the signatures that are kicked out. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, it does not replace the need for full-time staff. There would be one person then that is in charge of that machine, but then we have other, like one permanent person that is in charge of our boards, one permanent staff person is in charge of our tally room, we have one permanent staff person in front. And so we quickly run out of permanent staff people when there is me plus 5 of us. So we like to make sure we have at least one supervising set of eyes in the room whenever we do have those large elections with, 100, 150 temporary staff.
When you hire temporary staff to come on during elections, are you having difficulty filling those positions at all?
We always do. It's considered a volunteer position, though it does pay minimum wage. But it is an act of volunteerism, a way to get involved in democracy. But we hire through an employment agency. We did not have any staffing issues this last May election. We had 25 teams of 2 out to our 25 ballot drop sites to close. But we would never want to not have the staff, temporary staff that we need.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Salas?
Yeah, thank you, Clerk McMullen, for being here today. The clerk's office is, as you already stated, we all know, is generated income, and there's always been some brought back to the county for general fund purposes. So the former clerk did raise the issue about some portions of your department where revenues, and you're kind of addressed that today, are declining, and you're telling us that's coming around the corner. My question, one of my questions is that, do you feel that your departments or divisions, that those funds are fungible, or are they have to stay, the elections revenue stays as elections revenue, and that's not records? Are they legally separate, or are they fungible?
No, they're not legally separate, and in all intents and purposes, the recording fees pay for our elections. Recording makes up the majority of our revenue, while elections make up the majority of our expenses. We have a clerk liens fee, which is about $350,000, and that is one of the only restricted funds, and that allows us to basically staff 1.5 FTE in our recording division.
Okay. I know that you are restricted by state law on what some of those fees are. Can you identify which ones are not subject to any limits on the fees?
I believe virtually all of them are laid out in statute, how much we can charge. So I can charge you $115 to officiate your wedding. That's laid out in statute. I can't charge you $120 or $100.
Right.
There may be a few fees that we make individual decisions on, but we really do have to charge what we're required to charge, and no more, no less.
They include records then, I gather, then?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay, that's statute. Wow. Okay, so you're not alone, right? I mean, all counties must be experiencing the same thing. Is there an effort by the county clerks through the statewide association to address that with the state legislature?
There has been. There's been effort at the state level to get more funding at the state level that would then trickle down to the county level. But there's also an effort just to make our elections more sufficient and try to get more funding. But as you know, no county has enough funds to do all the work that they're expected to do, and I think elections is part of that.
Okay. And for not the allocated costs of the county that are, that you're receiving, but internally your allocated costs, for example, yourself and your managers, is that also spread out? For example, your salary, is that spread out across those divisions?
So my salary sits in the office of the county clerk, which is a different program.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So you do have your own internal allocated cost? Where you spread the cost for your staff?
I don't.
Okay. But you know what I mean?
No, we don't really allocate costs like that. The only program that we have that can be considered cost allocated is our records management program. to the tune of about 369,000. But that gets spread out to the other county departments.
Is your microphone on, Michael? I'm getting a flash that maybe.
Sorry, I'll get close.
There you go.
Just closer.
Thank you, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Lewis. I don't see any other cards up. I did, sorry, Sandra, I could not see that. Yeah.
I just want to make one quick clarification. We are seeing their revenue down about 40%, through the current
40.
period through March, and what we would project is about 40% to end the year.
Is your microphone on?
Yes.
I don't know why they're flashing at us. I can hear fine.
Oh, yeah, I see the flash.
Would you repeat that, please?
Yes, so the clerk's office, what we are seeing through March, or I'm sorry, through April, is that they're down about 40% in revenue. So that's what we would project through the end of the year, is down about 40%. And as Clerk McMullen correctly said, we did recognize that the cost allocations would be zeroed out for the entire department because one of her programs is in the cost allocation pool. And we did highlight that going forward, as we refine the cost allocations year over year, that we will not be waiving her cost allocation. She will actually be receiving it in the department. It's only the records management program. So one slice of her department that will be cost allocation free, if you will. So going forward, there will be in the future increased costs to the clerk's department or the clerk's office. We do know that, and we know that that will be a discussion. The hope is that things will rebound in the market and that things will be a wash. That may not happen. Obviously, we will just need to monitor very closely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Clerk McMillan and your staff for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Parks.
And we'll go back to the top of our list, Sheriff Brandenburg.
Good afternoon, Chair Parks, Budget Committee. Thank you for allowing me some brief comments. Today, I appreciate that the budget process can sometimes be messy and political. This is particularly true this year, as commissioners and I are opposed on how to cover the $5 million general fund shortfall in my budget. The county has given me $5 million less to cover operations, and in turn, my budget reduces operations to cover the shortfall. I will not look to the Sheriff's Public Safety Levy to cover the shortfall in general fund support. On the other hand, the commissioners want to use levy money to make up the reduction in general fund support. That is the standoff. One thing we can agree on is that both the commissioners and I support public safety. And for me, that means my office should be fully funded by the general fund, but that's not what is happening. The Clackamas County voters overwhelmingly support the work of the Sheriff's Office. It shouldn't be that our voters have to pay more taxes on top of their property taxes to get enhanced law enforcement services. But that is the reality when the county reduces its Sheriff's Office general fund support. When I asked the voters to support the Sheriff's Public Safety Levy in 2021, I promised them I would not allow the county to use the levy to offset a reduction in the county's general fund support. But that is exactly what is happening today. I want to explain to the public what is happening to the levy funds in the county's budget, but I am being prevented from providing information that will inform this process. There is no transparency to the budget process this year. The Budget Committee has not been given the detailed information necessary to be able to analyze the county administrator's budget for my office. Yesterday, I heard a lot about cost allocations and how the levy and the ELED must pay their fair share. I want to be perfectly clear. The levy and the ELED have always paid their fair share based on FTE. It's not about paying their fair share. It's about a new cost this year called administrative overhead costs that are in addition to the allocated costs they already pay. Commissioner West stated yesterday that the truth will come out in the budget process, and then he votes to prevent me from presenting my budget and explaining why the county's budget is not sustainable. All I want to do is to offer information that I believe the public and the Budget Committee have a right to consider as they determine how taxpayer dollars will be used to support the services the people pay for. They don't want information that the county's budget for my office is not sustainable because it underfunds materials and services and personnel. That the jail will be out of money for materials and services by the end of October, and I will not be able to meet jail medical or food costs. That my budget was built by a finance team that admitted yesterday that they do not understand the sheriff's office budget. They cut lines in my budget without understanding what they are used for. That there is no real subsidy of $1.5 million. The county cut my budget by $2.25 million and increased costs by $2.6 million. Their budget is essentially flat. There is no money in the budget for me to pay COLA or increase in benefits this year, even though deputies are in contract negotiations, and I have told the commissioners and the county they need to pay them what they are worth. Clearly, the commissioners do not understand how the finance works. Commissioner Savas, respectfully, you believe that there are two budget systems. There are not two sets of books. There is, however, a difference in methodology and philosophy between the finance team, my finance team, and the county's finance team. And Commissioner Smith admonished me for not publishing my budget in OpenGov. My team did enter the budget in OpenGov. And then the county locked me out and changed my budget because I refused to charge the levy with the general fund shortfall. My budget was erased and replaced with the county's budget. OpenGov is not a website where you post the budget, it's the county's budget system. In closing, I just want to be clear. The last thing I want to do is reduce sheriff's office operations and reduce positions. But the law requires me to produce a balanced budget when I have a $5 million cut. Along with my finance team, I worked side by side with the county administrator's finance team for months, but I refused to use the levy to supplant the reduction in general fund support, and the county took my budget from me. I took an oath to uphold the law and to protect and serve you. My oath means to me that I will use your tax dollars responsibly so my office can provide the services you expect and you deserve. The commissioners and I have fundamental disagreement on how to cover the general fund shortfall. One thing we can agree on is that both the commissioners and I support public safety, and for me, that is absolutely hopeful. Yesterday, the commissioners told the Enhanced Law Enforcement District Budget Committee that they are committed to making sure that all 36 deputies remain funded by the general fund if necessary. I am asking the commissioners to make the same commitment to the sheriff's office budget and fully fund my office using general fund money. Thank you, and I assume there will be some questions.
Before we begin with questions, because I know already there's Commissioner West and Commissioner Savas, I'd like to know if our Administrator Gary Schmidt would like to respond to any of the comment that we've just heard for clarification for all of us?
Sure. So I respect you very much, Sheriff Brandenburg, and your staff. I do feel we attempted to work collaboratively together through the last several months. OpenGov is the internal system we use for our financial accounting. That's true. There's one system that we all use countywide. It was locked for everyone in around March, April, so it wasn't specific to your office, Sheriff. Everyone was locked down as we were finalizing the budget. The only changes I asked my staff to make to your budget, Sheriff, was in the revenue line. We did not change anything that, I mean, you're the expert, not me. Anything in your programs and services, we maintain that. We just changed the revenue lines. Based on what I've shared yesterday, I'll share it again. My belief is that using a level of vacancy savings and distributing allocated costs to all of your funding sources, including the levy and ELED, which you already do. If you be fair, you do that already. And consider an overhead administrative function where you charge basically your command staff to all of your funding streams. And it doesn't appear you're doing that, and if you are, then let's correct that and understand that, but it doesn't appear at first glance that's occurring, that if you were to do that across all the funding streams and use the vacancy savings, and granted it's a one-time only subsidy for the allocation changes, I believe that you're able to absorb these reductions without having to reduce any programs or services. I will make the same commitment I made to you in this committee yesterday, Sheriff. I trust your staff and I trust my staff. It's not about who's right or wrong. I am trusting my finance experts. If I am wrong, then I will ask the board to give you the funding you need in the general fund throughout the year. But can we just give it a try and see if this is effective? And if it's not, we'll do a supplemental budget and correct it. But I do feel that what I'm suggesting is appropriate and true, follows the law, and I think it's a way that we can meet the needs of the county while still meeting the needs of public safety in your office. That's all I'm suggesting. Thank you.
Commissioner West.
I appreciate, Sheriff, your statement that we all value public safety. It's unfortunate that some of the narrative out there implied or implicated otherwise, and I do not doubt your value for public safety and your passion for it as mine, and that passion may have caused some of these political narratives to happen because we both love public safety. So I want to make sure I preface everything
Thank you,
under
Commissioner.
that.
Right, we agree on that.
We agree, and we have had many private conversations about how proud we are of Clackamas County deputies, the sheriff's office, and our public safety as a whole. And so I think that's a great starting point. So thank you for saying that in your statement. I do have some real legitimate questions, though, and I'm gonna pivot from the one that I spoke to earlier. I'll come back to that one, but I do have some things around the levy. So we assume, at least I assume, that voters approved the levy with the assumption that you needed to use these funds for your staffing. Yet you seem to be carrying over 6.6 million balance in levy funds this year and more than 7 million in the contingency next year instead of spending it on these needed positions. So my first question around that is, you've stated that you needed this contingency fund. How do you calculate that specific amount? And then I'll let you answer that because I have a couple other questions around the levy specifically.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner West. I appreciate that. I appreciate your words as well. So we, last year, this time when we were in front of the Budget Committee, Nancy Artman told the committee that we are going to see an influx of funds for the public safety levy because we asked for the community the voters to fund additional positions. And we know that there will be an influx of money, so it'll appear to, and I'm speaking for Nancy, but there will be an increase, it'll crest, and then we will start drawing down. So what we're seeing is what we predicted last year at the last Budget Committee meeting. So these funds are funds that belong to the voters. These funds, if they last us through 5 years, I don't have to ask the voters to increase in giving us more of their taxes. Good steward with their dollars now will get me 5 years, 10 years, maybe 15 years. This is the first time that we went out for an increase in the levy since 2008. So the Sheriff's Office has a history of using these funds appropriately, and just because there is a balance there does not mean that we're not using those dollars. We don't have any intention. They can only be used for what the voters asked for. And in addition, I can tell you that that The levy funds 92 positions. We are 75% staffed up in the levy. And we just received the dollars for this increase in November of 2022 for these additional services. So we are staffing up, and I'm sure you may have some questions about staffing.
Yeah, you also stated that the county is supplanting general funds. You said it in the statement that you just made. In fact, it is implementing the standard budget principles and procedures by fully distributing the overhead to the programs, I believe including Fund 100. And it should be noted that your staff already do this to a certain extent, but it doesn't seem like, as we talked about yesterday a little bit, with all those appropriate costs. And maybe you guys can speak to that too, but it seems like some of those costs are not extended throughout.
Yeah. I think my finance manager, Nancy Artman, would like to answer a question.
Sure. So to address your point, Commissioner.
Nancy, please speak directly into the microphone.
That one's finicky.
Is it?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So to address your point, Commissioner, we built in administrative costs, as both the sheriff and Administrator Schmidt has said. We worked really closely with county finance, specifically Elizabeth, Sandra, and Cindy, and worked on a methodology because we felt, quite frankly, pressured to include it. We haven't charged administrative overhead to any of our programs outside of the general fund ever in history. And we built that in, and after we conducted further research, looking at the IJA for the ELED specifically, the intent of the levy, as the sheriff has shared, we don't believe that they're appropriate costs to charge and don't have intention of doing so. So any methodology that was built upon by county finance is not one that CCSO concurs with.
Okay, I see that. I don't know. You guys are wanting to, maybe you have questions about my question. I don't know.
Thank you. Am I on? It's always on?
Oh, it's always on.
It's always on. Oh, thank you. So there's a couple of things I would like to clear up. When the levy talks about funding positions, when we look at positions, it's not just a fully loaded position, doesn't just include salary and benefits. A fully loaded position includes direct and indirect charges. Now, the sheriff's office may not agree with that, but that would be part and parcel of a fully loaded position. I think that is what Commissioner Savas was talking about. Mm-hmm. And so we're not using levy funds to supplant general funds. We are taking a standard business practice of distributing the administrative costs of the sheriff's office, which is about $12 million. And the sheriff's office manages all those funds. The finance department manages all those funds. Operational support manages all those funds. And those funds, the cost of those should be distributed to those programs. Now, the sheriff's office has distributed part of those funds, and I think it's about $3 million. So obviously, they thought it was okay to distribute part of them, but there isn't a reason to not distribute all of them. So we use the exact same formula, the percentage. They distributed about 28% of the administrative costs. We used that formula and applied that to the rest of the administrative costs. And we also subtracted out what they had already distributed, so we weren't distributing it twice. It is a very standard practice. There is no supplanting going on, and we are just putting the costs where they need to be.
And I think that, Sandra, you had a question or a comment back to that previous discussion before I call on the other speakers.
Yes, Sorry, I wanted to clarify that we did work with CCSO in the current year to get the number from them, to get the distribution of the partial administrative costs that they had spread to their programs. So we got that. We were able to clarify from them that they were distributing about 3.2 million. The issue was that we couldn't see it anywhere in the system. As I said, our accounting follow-up, we could not identify where that revenue was at, because if you charge something out, there should be a corresponding revenue. We were not able to see that. Despite that, we took it at their word and subtracted that 3.2 million from the allocation of the overhead. And so we did charge the difference, and that is what's being charged to the levy, to the contract cities, and to the ELED. So it's not duplicative. It is just the full administrative cost, and the ELED and the contract cities and the levy are receiving their portion of that cost, which is a standard business practice.
Thank you, Ms.
That answers
Montoya.
my questions. Sheriff, you also stated privately in conversations and then here publicly, I've heard multiple times and in the media, that the levy is an enhancement of services, and without having positions in Fund 100 fully staffed, no enhancement can occur. So I guess it begs the question, it is unlikely that the Fund 100 will ever be fully staffed, so does that mean that you won't fill levy positions?
So I think there's obviously some misunderstanding about how we fill positions. The sheriff's philosophy is that the general fund is the base. And so I believe it was last July, we filled all of those positions other than 6 new positions that the county administrator had given us for the jail. As we fill positions, we fill the levy and the ELED, I believe the ELED and then the levy. And that's just how we do it. If someone leaves the general fund, is in a general fund position and they leave the organization, the next person that gets hired goes into a general fund position. If someone leaves the organization and there are no general fund positions, the next position to get filled is the ELED and then the levy.
But you'll never, okay, I don't know if that answers my question, but you're never gonna have your general fund positions always fully staffed, so I don't know, because it sounds like
The general fund positions should always be filled first, so we would have them filled first.
Okay, and then my last question, and I'll yield, because I know we have time and I don't want to be greedy. So I've heard this a lot. This question comes up a lot. I hope you guys, I bet you have an answer for it. So when I alluded to earlier, Sheriff, you do have a large budget, not the largest or the most complex one here in the county, yet you do have $12+ million in operational support and finance, as well as a movie studio or an $818,000 PIO office. What's the justification for these duplicative positions? Because we have a lot of those functions already in the county. So can you justify those additional costs?
Sure, and I respectfully disagree that our budget's not complex. I think we've heard from the budget manager that she acknowledges that our budget is complex. And second of all, we do not have duplicative services. The Sheriff's Office is a 24/7 emergency services operation, and we're not a regular county department. So our PIO responds 24/7, 365. In respect to the finance, I appreciate Ms. Montoya, who said yesterday candidly that they just don't understand the Sheriff's Office budget. And we're aware of that because we've worked closely this last year, and it's been difficult, and I think for both sides, a little frustrating, and I'll acknowledge that. But we have a very complex budget, and it is not simple. And so my answer to that is that we do not have duplicative services. We have services that I need in order to make sure that I can serve and protect and to provide the services that our community deserves. In response to our PIO suite, I took over office in 2021, and that has been something that has been brought up year and year after year. It's not a studio suite, it's office space. And we need that. My community expects that we're going to communicate with them, especially in times of trouble. Wildfires, ice storms, when someone is running around in their neighborhood and there's a manhunt going on. We just put out video the other day of drone footage. That person was terrorizing neighborhoods, and they deserve to have quick and responsive and the latest information so they know that we're serving, we're protecting, and they're safe. So that's my response to the Public Information Officer office.
When the Board of County Commissioners unanimously over and over again said, we will 100% committed to funding your positions, even as Gary Schmidt said, before anybody on this committee had even seen the budget, you sent an internal email out to a number of your staff telling them that they would be laid off. And many of those staff were not sworn staff, but I know that many of your sworn staff felt like they were next and they all had a guillotine hanging over their neck, and it devastated the morale, I believe, in your agency. Why, when we promised publicly and still persist to promise today, do you threaten the good men and women of your agency with layoffs?
Commissioner West, I absolutely disagree with that statement, that I threaten my people. My people deserve to know what's happening. In the absence of information, people fill in the blanks. My people, I am an elected sheriff, and I am the appointing authority. They deserve to know that when I submit a budget to the county administrator, I called the county administrator and said, these allocated cost increase of 2.6, I can't do this without eliminating staff. I gave him a courtesy call. What I understand is that when I submit my budget, which was due, because it was required of me by law, names were listed of people that I would have to eliminate if this budget went through. I didn't tell them they were going to be eliminated. I said their names were going to appear on the layoff list. I did not want them finding this out through the rumor mill. They deserve that. They deserve that respect. And since then, I have asked my staff, hey, so do you feel that, would you want to know that your name was on the list? Or did you want to find that out from somebody else? And they said, no, I want to know, because I want to be able to plan. And so my courtesy notification to my staff, I believe, was absolutely appropriate and transparent.
We hadn't seen the budget. You sent an email, which I have a copy of, that told people that they were in threat of losing their jobs. I believe it impacted morale negatively in your department. And I hope, I at least still personally stand by the position, by the position. And I told you privately I would never vote for a budget that I believe would cut one staff and one agency, and we were trying to work hard behind the scenes. But then to the media, then to your deputies, your non-sworn staff coming to us, devastated by your actions, I think, I just want to know, I guess I know your justification now for why you did what you did, but I think it was damaging.
Well, I appreciate that, but my staff, they deserve to know everything. This budget process has been non-transparent. They deserve to know what's coming. And as the appointing authority and the sheriff in my office, I will always side to over-communicating and communicating with my people.
I yield, I'm done.
All right, thank you. We have a couple of comments from members of the committee, and I notice also that Ms. Montoya has her card out, so I want to make sure that if it's in response to anything that's timely, she have an opportunity to speak to that.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a couple of points. The first one is we have a 16-year history of vacancies for the entire county, but also for this department. That 16-year history shows that annually, CCSO has 6.8% average of vacancy rate. In this fiscal year, 6.8% would be 40 positions. Currently, there are 44 vacant positions. So I would say we are on track this year to exceed the average number of vacancies. So Commissioner West, to your point, if this tendency of filling the general fund first persists, then I would agree with your reasoning, and that is that the levy would never be filled and that fund balance would continue to grow just as it is in the current fiscal year. The other is that over the last couple of years, there has been a shift from the original practice when I came on 3 years ago, the practice was to spread those positions across the 3 funds that are within CCSO. What we have seen over the last 1 to 2 years is that they are filling general fund first and the levy last, which is building up that fund balance, but also it is throwing off our general fund projections because it's different in practice. So that is raising another flag that we need to be monitoring. The last item that I will clarify is, while I said that the sheriff's budget is complex, it's not complex because it needs to be. It's complex because of the organizational structure, because of the delays in posting things, because of the number of correcting journal entries that are processed. It doesn't have to be that difficult. We have departments, 2 departments in the county that are much larger than CCSO, and we are not seeing those types of problems within those departments. And so I would again ask that we work together to streamline, to make it more efficient, to work the system to that advantage so that it's not so taxing on the people who work there. You may find that you can do with less people if you're using the system adequately. And as we've said in the April Budget Committee meeting, Finance owns that in the past, we have not had all of the systems in place, and we have driven departments to creating their own subsystems. That is not the case over the last 3 years. We've really turned it around, and we are hearing from departments that they are able to use the system. They are relying on the system. They're able to make sound projections and make better use of the tools that we have. That is what we are asking, and we believe that if CCSO is willing to do that, they would be able to make those reductions, and it wouldn't be anything that is a burden to people, but it's actually just harnessing the natural savings of vacancies that are occurring within their department.
Thank you.
Chair Parks, may I answer that, please?
Yes, succinctly, please.
I will try.
Thank you.
So I can tell you that when you talk about vacancy savings for my office, that never in the history of the sheriff's office have we hired at such a pace as my administration. Last year, we hired 37 deputies. This year so far, we've hired 25. We are recruiting in the community. We are getting great candidates. We are an employer of choice. So counting on vacancy savings is going to be problematic. We are unprecedentedly hiring. In response to the finance issues that you talk about, we know from working together that our finance teams are frustrated with each other. So the things that you're saying about us not understanding or having to do re-entries and journal entries, we have a long list of documented issues with county finance. And to the fact that we have also, I believe it's accounts payables that we have taken on to help the county out. So I think that putting that in this forum is very unfair. And I won't go into that, but I do believe that we are committed to working with you, Gary, to iron out these issues, to streamline, to make efficiencies. That's my promise to you.
Thank you. So we have Commissioner Savas, and then Member Jamie Karn, and then Member Ken. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sheriff, thank you for being here today. I actually appreciate this dialogue because it's exposed something that I think we all ought to consider. And it came out yesterday. It came out on April 13th in the meeting we had in the offices with your staff, and other things that came out that I spoke to yesterday that came out in prior discussions with your staff. And that is that the means in which things are costed and assigned, again, which, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but, I've been doing public budgets since 1998, and in business budgets, which is separate, private sector business and government slightly different, but the business practice in government that Cindy alluded to is appropriate, is common, and I would ask you and your staff to study tab 27 quite a bit, because it really talks about that indirectly. It's education, it's informative, educational in the sense that about how costs are allocated for your own, for the benefit of the sheriff's department, for all of us, right? So years back, again, I appreciate your staff working with me. I had asked questions that ultimately revealed all good intentions, there's nothing wrong with it, but revealed that the way things cost are actually recognized or not recognized aren't really being assigned where they ought to be assigned. So hence, you know, I walked away with the feeling that, geez, if you don't have these numbers, and I don't need them, you all need them, I think, to make good decisions when it comes to what you charge for a school for an SRO, as I mentioned yesterday, or what you charge for a city for services, right? If you don't have all those raw numbers, right, what it costs for the administration, including your salary and the undersheriff's salary, when you get a call, if you get a call from an SRO or you get a call from a city, okay, the sheriff's responding. If you have a deputy that needs some assistance that is part of the levy, you're still the sheriff. If you get a call or a situation, an ELED in the district, you're the sheriff. And your support structure is part of delivering that service. It should be so expensed. It should be built in and spread across there. That's how it's done. As a result, I'm concerned that the county, it shouldn't be this fund or that fund. I'm going to back up. My concern is the county or the county general fund is not possibly subsidizing whether it's SROs or it's the city contracts. But if you're not, and your statement today and your statements today almost validate my concern, frankly, that if you're going to fund this first and not include your costs in the statements yesterday and today, again, it's not a criticism. It's not. It just demonstrates to me that really we need to get on the same page, cooperate, and look at doing things in the modern, acceptable world of accounting. I really think that standard business practice would help, not hurt. And I think that while you've done it this way or staff's done it this way, that doesn't mean it's the only way. I would have gone broke if I simply didn't charge for the overhead of my staff for different operations, because I never would have been able to cost it correctly. I wouldn't survive. I never would have done that. To Commissioner West's point, I think that I want to touch on this briefly, but the concern I have when Commissioner West raised the issue of the letter or the communications to your staff, which you have a perfect right to do. I'm not going to dispute that at all. That's your sole responsibility. But my concern, and I shared this both in my capacity as a public official and my capacity as a business owner, when my business or operations were in jeopardy maybe of economics times, I knew that payroll would be tough. I knew that I had to dip into my savings to make payroll. I didn't want to cut my employees' hours. I didn't tell them that I was struggling. They knew economically we were struggling, but I always made sure I kept them busy. I always made sure I paid their salaries. The point is that if you want to retain people, which I did, if you want good quality people, which I did, which I do, the last thing you want to do is tell or message to the world and to the staff that there's a financial problem. Now, you might feel that and you said it, and I'm not going to disagree with that. You might feel that there's a responsibility for you to be candid and to be honest and so forth. But to the point that was being made, and I made this on April 13th when we met. You know, I made the statement yesterday again. I really feel that my colleagues on the commission all would want to guarantee that every position was funded. Okay, and we made that, you didn't hear anything contrary. The administrator presented a budget which guaranteed funding for every position. And we said, and the administrator said that if there's a funding problem and the math doesn't work out, we're going to support that and guarantee that. That seemed to be a good, honest intention. And not putting at risk. Some of your employees have reached out to me and others concerned about their job. Does that give them the faith to go to work? Or the people that might be considering coming to Clackamas County to be a deputy, does that give them confidence that this is a place to go to work? Or maybe it's a different county where the finances are not publicly being challenged or look challenging or look like they're in trouble. I mean, you want to go to work for a good organization. You don't want to go for there for a while and find out it's a struggling organization. But I'm just afraid, frankly, that when we say 34 positions being cut, and it's not coming from us, I just think it's ironic that you have a Board of County Commissioners that are saying, we want a budget that funds all those positions. And I had to tell my folks and friends and neighbors, I'm not going to support a budget that has cuts. So if I had a choice between the two, I would choose to fund all the positions. All right?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, could I respond to that before you move on?
Sure.
I will always communicate with my employees, whether it's good or bad news, because they deserve to know. The county cut my budget. I didn't ask for my budget to be cut. They deserve to know there are funding problems. And when I talked with the county administrator and said, I'm concerned I have to make cuts, he said, please allocate a cost, don't do it because of that. And I said, I don't have it anywhere to give, excuse me. And I asked the county administrator, are you going to provide additional funds to me? And he said, no. So I understand and I appreciate that you want my budget fully funded, but that's the information I had at the time. On a very short timeline, because I was required to submit my budget.
Appreciate that. I heard that already. Heard that today. I heard that yesterday. I guess you don't find that our guarantees of funding the budget as credible. That's how I take it. Okay.
Commissioner, I didn't know at the time.
I have the floor.
So I didn't know at the time. I'm working with the county administrator who tells me he doesn't have any more money for me. And so I'm put in a position where I have to provide a balanced budget.
Can you take a minute, please?
Just time out.
With the cuts.
Let's just chill out.
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
So I'm not sure that there's a direct answer to.
No, there's not. I was trying to make my statement, which I'm not even completed.
Yeah. With your permissions, I'll move on to the other people who
I'm not finished. The sheriff interrupted me and asked to have a few minutes. She got them, and I'd just like to finish.
Okay.
Chair. So the other aspect of this is that we need to fill these positions first versus those first. I would say, and I got the measure right here, 3-566. I don't see language where it says, thou shalt fill this first or that first. To me, here's what I read it. I live in ELED. I live in the county, and I also live in this, the county-wide for the levy. I'm paying for all those, okay? I expect you to fill all those positions as fast as possible and not leave the levy unfunded or unfilled, positions unfilled. I mean, it's not first, it's all, as fast as possible. To me, this is the most recent mandate. Please fill the positions. Please hire up. We're giving you the resources to do that. If you need more resources and the budget's not correct, the administrator promised yesterday, he promised today, and we as well, that we will fill that. We'll fill that gap. And please, let's work on a way to reconcile these differences of how we do the accounting in a way that brings us up to standard practices, standard government accounting practices. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Chair Parks, may I just briefly? I disagree about going to the levy. We have 23 positions that are sitting empty out of 92 positions in the levy. So we are filling the levy, and it will be doing the work that the voters intended. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have Mr. Karn, then Mr. Cernach, Commissioner Shaw, Commissioner Smith, and Commissioner West.
Oh, I'm still, no.
Not you? Not
nope,
yet?
That just reddish.
Okay.
Thank you.
You see what happens when you leave your card up,
We all
right?
heard enough from Commissioner West today.
Okay. All right. So Karn, Cernach, Shaw, Smith. There we go.
Thank you, Chair Parks. First of all, Sheriff Brandenburg, thank you and staff for being here. You know, and I know, we've had the honor of working together over the years on several major incidents, and I've always appreciated the good work, the hard work, the brave work of your staff. Thank you all for being here. Myself, and I know everybody here, we do value you a great deal. I have 3 quick questions, and some of them may have been touched on just a little bit, but we all know that this has been a difficult process, and especially for your office. If you were to tell me what the main difference is between your budget and the county's budget, what would that look like?
I would say that my budget is a sustainable, balanced budget that does not use levy funds in replace of general fund dollars. That is the bottom line, and that is the standoff piece that I referenced in my speech. And we all want, I don't want to make cuts. I do not want to make cuts. I worked hard to get the levy passed that bring us additional deputies and body-worn camera program, internal affairs investigators. I know what I need. I have a staffing study that I commissioned when I took over, and it says we need more, not less. So I also didn't cut my budget. I am reacting to the county's need to cut, and I understand that we all need to take a cut. And I did that, and I submitted a balanced budget.
Okay, thank you. The second question, we heard earlier, too, that it seems as though a big dispute between you and the county's budget might be administrative cost over allocated cost. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
Sir.
Can you explain that a little bit further?
I'm going to turn that over to Nancy Artman, Finance Manager.
Thank you for the question. To provide clarification, there has been some dialogue going about that the Sheriff's Office does not charge cost allocations to the levy or the ELD, and that it has been disproportionate, so that it is only paying for personnel. There's also confusion between administrative overhead charges and cost allocations. Cost allocations are those costs for internal county services, such as human resources, finance, information technology, things of those nature. We have charged consistently based on the number of FTE in each of the funds, those costs out since I have been at the Sheriff's Office and prior to that, quite frankly. The administrative overhead cost is a new cost proposed this year that you have heard members of the county finance team describe, so I will not describe them again to you. However, they are new, they are distinct, and quite frankly, I believe the manner in which the methodology is applied treats our other funds, specifically the levy and the ELD, as a grant, which they are not.
Okay, thank you. Last question. I'm sorry. Sure, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Nancy correctly said the cost allocations are the central and internal service overhead that is distributed, and there is no dispute that they are spreading those costs. We can see that, and we can see the revenue from that. So it's very easy to see. So you have on one side the charge, on the other side the revenue. That's basic debits and credits in accounting. We can see it, it's transparent, we can move on. The internal overhead, the administrative overhead, which is the roughly 15 million from CCSO down to their departments, that is what is not transparent. That is when we pulled up those 2 spreadsheets yesterday for you, that is what's showing 100% covered by the general fund. That is the portion that we've continued to say, if you are distributing those costs, we cannot see it in budget or in accounting, and it's not transparent. So please show us, because we aren't seeing the revenue, which would equate to a reduction in general fund support. That's the part we can't see. that is also the portion that CCSO responded and said, we are distributing these costs. Here is the methodology that we are spreading it on. So that is the portion we subtracted from that 15 million, and we distributed the difference based on their methodology. So I would respond and say, if you are spreading administrative overhead and you are doing it for partial, then why would it be wrong for county finance to take the portion that you aren't distributing and distribute it by the same exact methodology? So if county finance is wrong in distribution of charging the levy or the ELED overhead cost, then I would pose that the sheriff's office is also doing it wrong.
Thank you. Last question. So Commissioner Savas, I'm going to quote, he suggested to you, based on the information we heard before between levy and the LED, on how many deputies that you might be available to hire within the next couple of years. Do you have a projected idea of how many deputies you might be able to hire, or do you have a plan for that?
If I may answer. So since we're we've hired 27 deputies so far this year. We're actually on 25. We are on pace to hire 64 deputies by the end of this year, which, I mean, that's a lot of deputies, but that is what we were doing. We are working with our county partners. We're working with our PIO. We're working with our staff. They're out there at job fairs. We are recruiting heavily, and we are on pace, at this pace, to hire 64 deputies this year.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Is that 64 additional on top of the 25?
No, it's 64 total.
Mr. Cernach, Commissioner Shull, and Commissioner Smith.
I have a question, and I don't know if it might have been asked yesterday. I'm less familiar with the functioning of the levy, but the ELED, because you mentioned you filled general fund positions first and then ELED, if I'm remembering correctly. Would it be possible to fill ELED at the same time or first, but then prioritize services to the ELED as a result?
I don't understand the question. Do you understand the question?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your question.
The ELED is a subsection of Clackamas County that pays additional taxes for additional services,
Yes,
correct?
it's the Enhanced Law Enforcement District, yes.
Right. So if you hire positions funded by the ELED prior to general fund positions, and then prioritize serving the ELED over the county, would that be an alternate methodology for filling positions?
They were filled. They were filled because we can't afford them.
I'm sorry.
I just want to ask, Cindy, does your comment go directly to that question? Or, I'm trying to integrate staff as needed to.
My comment goes to the levy and the funds available in personnel and.
Okay, if.
No, I'm sorry, I understand your question now. So the levy the ELED has been filled to what it can afford. So the ELED has had an ongoing, we've been concerned about its shortfall because of tax collections and not paying its full share. And we've had these conversations year after year. And so we've had some positions vacant, believing that we would have to cut them. So the ELED has been staffed essentially to what it can afford.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Becker?
Thank you. I just would like to clarify, there's just been a lot of conversation about the county kind of gouging the levy, and I just want to go over some of the numbers because I think it's important on the levy. The levy's budget this year was $24 million, and it's projected to be $30 million next year. In terms of expenses, the budget is personnel, $14 million. The the sheriff's projections were 10 million, and in the budget is 15 million. Materials and services, the budget is $4 million, projected was about 4.9, and the budget is 8 million. So I don't see where the levy is being gouged to supplant general funds.
Can I respond to that, please? Chair Parks, may I respond?
You want to respond to that?
Yes.
No, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, go ahead.
So the levy, we're not saying there's not money in the levy. We absolutely understand that. On July 1st, we got 30 extra positions in the levy. In November of 2022, we got the money for that levy. Of course, we did not have all of the positions filled on July 1. That would have been impossible. So there is a buildup in the levy. However, the levy is for certain things. It is not to be spent on whatever the county wishes. And that is our issue with this this overhead cost. It is at a time when the county is looking for additional dollars to pay for the courthouse that all of a sudden we have this administrative overhead cost. And this year for the levy, it's $1.7 million. That has never been charged to the levy before. Never. And that is our point of contention. That is the sheriff's concern.
Thank you for that comment. If I might say, it also occurs to me that there's been a move towards trying to establish these processes. COVID kind of got in the middle of that. Other things did, various things. So now there's a new process that the county.
Please don't conflate allocated cost methodology. There's a new allocated cost methodology that is absolutely true. That is separate from this administrative overhead that is new. These are two separate things.
Chair Parks, may I respond?
Ms. Comfort.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, this is not a new administrative costs. As Sandra and Nancy actually both discussed, that this was a fee charged from general fund administrative overhead to the levy and ELED. But that's where we were looking for that $3.2 million to find out where that was being dispersed. So what we did when we made the final adjustments to the CCSO budget is we completed that process of sharing administrative overhead costs from general fund to ELED and to the levy. It is not a new cost. It's just completing that process. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to Commissioner Schall, and then we have Commissioner Smith, Ms. Lee, and Commissioner West.
Well, thanks for hanging in there. I'm looking at your comparative budget between the county proposed budget and the sheriff's information on the slides you sent, okay? I want to try to understand this because at the bottom you have a $3.3 million difference between the county proposed budget and your column here, okay? 3.3 million. If we go up to the line charges, fees, license, permits, fines, and assessment, that's where we see a $3.2 million difference. Can you tell me how that was derived? What are we looking at there, Nancy?
Sure, thank you for the question, Commissioner. That is where the revenue post for administrative overhead and direct cost. And that is the difference that we've just been addressing with administrative overhead. And that is the primary driver of that line.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so when we get down to total revenues, county proposed budget, $115,440,000. Sheriff's information, $112,084,000. And so we see basically that $3.3 million again.
Correct.
And we get down to the bottom of the operating expenditures, county proposed budget $115,050,000.
Yes, sir.
And the sheriff's information, $111,649,000. And again, the difference is $3.4 million. Okay, so we see this 3.2, 3.3, 3.4 carry through. And at the very bottom, total expense, county budget, $115,440,000. Sheriff's budget, $112,084,000. And okay, so the difference is $3,356,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And the difference in cost is that the sheriff's proposed budget does include the reduction of FTE, so that cost has been backed out of our proposal.
Okay.
That was the sheriff's final proposed
Okay.
budget.
Now, on Thursday afternoon, we'll have the budget deliberations, and hopefully we can approve all the budgets. And so what I'm trying to get at here now is, on Thursday afternoon, when we do the budget deliberations, I want to approve the budget, and I want you to be able to be happy with it, so that come 1 July, we're funded and we're rolling again. Now, we're going to have some bugs to work out. So very obvious in the discussion we had today and tomorrow. But the bottom line is to get a budget that we can live with on Thursday. So on the 3.3 million on the bottom of your chart here, does that take into consideration the $1.5 million that the county administrator has said he's going to move over?
Yes, sir.
It does.
It does. And the bottom line general fund support addition to the sheriff's office is approximately $458,000, including that subsidy. Had we not received that subsidy, we would have been in the hole by that amount. So
Okay.
we have used all revenue resources that we have available to us. We have, if you recall, sir, the commissioners were good enough to give us ARPA dollars for lost revenue from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We had those dollars purposed for very specific things, but that has gone to offset the cost for jail medical, which will go up by $1.4 million this year, and that cost will carry through for the next 5 years. So if we were to look at just, and this is the crux of the difficulty and the disagreement, I believe, is we believe that what is submitted by the sheriff was a balanced budget that was sustainable. If you back out the $1.5 million subsidy and just take jail medical at $1.4 million, we're already starting next fiscal year at a $3 million deficit. That's prior to adding in cost for COLAs. That's prior to any standard increases for cost of business. So what we are hoping for, and what we have heard Administrator Schmidt say, and I'm sure he is good to his word, is that if this budget is not sufficient, it will be funded, just as would be the ELED budget as well.
Okay, so there's a potential that the county administrator could look at county reserves for filling the gap? Is that possible, Administrator Schmidt?
Yes, or we'd reallocate, budget, we budget here year to year.
Yeah, okay.
Not 10 years in advance, so we would reallocate other general funds from other departments.
Okay.
If necessary.
So one final question is that on Thursday, if we were to approve the county administrator's budget and remember his commitment to any potential shortfall, would you recommend that perhaps we could approve the budget during budget deliberations on Thursday and then come back and look at this later on in the fall and do a supplemental budget to cover the difference? And what I'm trying to do here today is I'm trying to get to a point where we can all go home tonight and feel relatively comfortable that we're working together as a team. And on Thursday, we can hopefully approve a budget, and we don't have to have a lot of tension and animosity and kind of, needing a Tums to, looking at the start of the new fiscal year. Okay?
Well, if-
So I don't know,
If I may, I think we always have the opportunity to look at the budgets again and do a supplemental budget.
Yeah.
Or see where some, maybe there's been more funds come in or less funds come in various, areas. So I wouldn't think that that would be a concern for us moving forward. We can look at, the Board of County Commissioners, can look at supplemental budgets or whatever changes come up, correct? And that's
correct.
That's done frequently throughout the year. So I'd like to, as much as possible, move forward through the rest of this.
Chair Parks, may I please just respond to Commissioner Schull?
yeah, thank you.
So Commissioner Schull, I appreciate where you're going. There is one specific spot in the budget that is very concerning to me particularly, and it is in the jail operations. And so I don't know how we can pass a budget where the jail operations is funded at $449,000 for the year, when that is what we have spent in food to date this year. So that is completely underfunded. So I would appreciate that, except for in that specific space.
Okay, one last comment. Then, between now and Thursday, if there's something the board can get, the budget committee can get on that issue, on how we can remediate that problem. Yeah, because I understand that $449,000 won't go too far running that jail, okay? So, again, let me leave it with this. Sometime between now and Thursday afternoon, we need to come up with some sort of idea to address this problem so that we can get an approval on the budget on Thursday, I'm hoping. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Schull.
Thank you. We still have, if I've got this list right now, we've got Commissioner Smith, Ms. Lee, Commissioner West, Commissioner Schrader, and Ms. Becker. You had a comment to something that's already been said? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Thank you. Again, I want to be clear. We have looked at the actual expenditures. We're not necessarily budgeting budget to budget. And if you look at materials and services, where all of that, the medical and the food and all of that is, the projections by the sheriff was, I think, $23 million. We have in the budget $27 million. If you look at actuals over the past several years, it was $16 million, $17 million, $18 million. So it was, I think it's important to understand that you can talk about the budget cloud. We're looking at the actual expenses and trending those forward. The sheriff's office knows that in the M&S category, that they can move money around within that category. So if there's not enough money in the food line, they look at areas in the other parts of the M&S budget where there is more than enough money. Every department does that. I know they do that. And so to say a specific line item is underfunded when the whole M&S budget is being projected at several $1 million more than they've ever spent, I think is misleading.
Thank you, Ms. Becker.
Chair Parks, I beg your pardon. I realize that we're running a bit behind, but I'd like to provide just some brief clarification, and I promise I will be brief. This is part of the issue of when we roll up a budget and look at it at a program level versus a service code. To the issue that Ms. Becker just addressed, one line in particular for professional services was looked at as a whole, and that $1.4 million increase that we budgeted was the jail medical that I shared with the group. There are two entries in the jail materials and services program that are negative entries that go against the county budget manual itself, but that relates to a $1.156 million decrease. It takes the balance of all materials and services and reduces it down to $449,000 for operations. That's equivalent to 3.75 months of jail operations. That doesn't take into account personnel. It doesn't take into account cost allocations, which are funded, but it does not provide funding for just that increase to jail medical, and it does not provide for operations for any portion of the year.
Thank you. We have,
I think they want to answer.
the
card is up.
oh, Carter, yes, sorry. Ms. Montoya.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's too narrow a view. I think that when you are showing or highlighting one change, I believe that the way Cindy is looking at it is actually the better way, because it's looking at all of materials and services, and budget law has us looking not just at materials and services, but we roll up personnel, materials and services, and capital outlay. So as we've said, the vacancy savings alone would more than cover any differences. And we don't look at it at the program level, and we certainly don't look at it at the service level. So within your department, within your general fund, Department 21, you would have the liberty of shifting dollars or your budget authority in order to cover any medical increases that you would have. And we can look at the system, and as Cindy said, just in materials and services alone, what we're looking at is a 3-year history of averages about 17 million, 18 million if I'm being generous, and the budget is 26.9 million. So just comparing averages to what the budget is a significant increase. And next year's budget in materials and services is 27.5 million. And again, that's general fund. So we're looking at it at a narrow level, the way budget law would require. So I don't believe that throwing out that scary comment is necessary.
It is not a scary comment. It is a reality of our budget. And I'd like to point out, as a point of clarification, and I addressed this last year, materials and services within any budget within this organization, not just the sheriff's office budget, includes cost allocations, it includes liability insurance, and it includes other costs such as CCOM and C800, for which we have zero control. If you look at the sheriff's office budget and look at materials and services, it would actually be a negative figure if you were to take out those increases for those costs that we have no control over. And Administrator Schmidt said to us this year that we are not allowed to move funds, although the budget is adopted at the fund level. We are not allowed to move within categories from personnel to materials and services. We respect that, and we've honored that. I'm just sharing the facts as they exist. There is no other space within our budget that we can take that cost and reallocate it. Our budget is very lean. We barely pieced it together, and it did include reductions because there was not sufficient revenue.
Commissioner Smith, then Ms. Lee, then Commissioner West, then Commissioner Schrader.
Thank you. I have about 3 questions. This is directed to Gary Schmidt and Stephen Magcor. Gary, when the sheriff threatened to fire her people, even before the budget was released, even before county commissioners saw the budget, you stepped in and said no. What was your authority to do that?
Following state and county, the state law and county code, state ordinance, ORS 294.331, the role of a budget officer, and also ORS 204.6601, number and appointment of deputies and other employees. The county court or board of county commissioners of each county shall fix the number of deputies and employees of county officers whose compensation is to be paid from county funds. I interpret that as you, commissioners, decide how much money, how many deputies and how much money are in the sheriff's office. She gets to hire and fire them, but you decide how many and how much they get paid. And then County Code 209.060 talks as my authority as a budget officer, and coordinate the work and facilities of all offices, departments, and agencies, both elective and appointed, and devise ways and means whereby efficiency and economy may be secured in the operation of all offices, departments, districts, and agencies.
So if we do not intend on firing anybody, they will not be fired according to your authority. Is that correct?
That is correct for any employee except in the sheriff's office. But this is very specific. The County Code 2.05-040.3 says unclassified employees are under the direction of the sheriff hiring and firing.
And who are
That's the
unclassified?
sheriff, a captain or an
So
undersheriff.
her administrative staff, but I'm talking boots on the ground. You know, I hear from constituents all the time. There was a situation of my good friend who had, you know, a perpetrator break into her house, and she called the sheriff and couldn't get one. And she says to me, we passed a 50% increase to put more patrols on the road. Where are they? And I says, well, that's a good question for the sheriff. Sheriff, you came to this commission right when I became chair and said, my levy is going to expire, and I need a 50% increase so we can put more patrols on the road. And I don't see where that has happened. And that is an issue. This board has said consistently yesterday and today, please hire more. Now, my question is this. You said that you are going to hire 64 deputies this year. Is that a promise that you can keep? Because we promised to you that we would supplant any budget decline that you might have of revenue with our general fund. We made that promise to you, but I'm not hearing a whole lot of promises back from you how you're going to keep our county safe. You talk about the jail. We know that people are going to have food at the jail. We know that people are going to be incarcerated when they need to be, or partially released because we don't have enough space at the jail. So can you promise us that indeed you're going to hire 64 more by the end of, did I hear calendar year, or was it fiscal year?
That would be the fiscal, or the calendar year, Chair. And may I reply back to your statements?
Briefly.
So to threaten to fire my people is inaccurate. It's giving them the courtesy to let them know with my budget cuts that the county gave to me that they may not have a job come July 1st, May. My hope was that the county would reverse its course and fund my budget. And I'm happy to hear that sounds like that is the direction that we're
It
going.
instilled fear into your people, which is unconscionable because this commission will never allow that to happen.
Chair, I call that transparency. My people deserve to know when there are financial issues and not to be kept in the dark. And I respectfully disagree.
Let's talk about transparency for a moment here. A couple years ago, at the direction of this Board of County Commissioners and our administrator, we decided to do budgets differently. And our finance staff employed what we call a chart of accounts, correct? Okay. And it was a big change for our departments, and our departments don't like change. You know, nobody likes change. Our elected officials didn't like the change. But when you employ a chart of accounts, in addition to, we said you must reconcile your budgets monthly. Chart of accounts, monthly reconciliations. All departments in the county, from what I understand, are doing it. All elected officials, from what I understand, are doing it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the sheriff is not doing that. And the reason why we do that is to identify monies that have not been spent. Every department in this county was underspending their budgets. And so when this staff over here says we are budgeting to actuals, not what a projection of the future might hold, that's very important for the sheriff's office to join in that effort on establishing a chart of accounts that we use at the county and monthly reconciliations. Do you supply the county with a monthly reconciliation of your budget?
So my staff has been working with county finance to make that process work. And it's our goal to work with them to make that happen.
But it hasn't happened yet. So that's the problem, as I see. we can provide additional finance staff to help you, but as I see it and the board sees it, it's been brought with resistance. And Commissioner Savas so adroitly said yesterday, both finance staffs need to sit down and get this right and use the same process that every other elected official is using in the county. And if we need an audit, and I'm not talking one of these fluff audits, they go and they take a look at one or two line items. I'm talking a full financial audits of how monies are spent and used, and I think that has always been a resistance upon the sheriff.
Sheriff Smith, may I answer to that? I welcome an audit. When I first took over, I had the independent auditor come in and look at our finances.
What your audit showed is that you didn't have enough money, and that's how you justify going to the voters for a 50% tax increase.
No, that is absolutely not true.
That's exactly
That's
true.
absolutely not true.
It's
I had already
exactly
gone out to
true.
the voters for this levy, which I understand, I know that you did not support. That is absolutely not true, and I would welcome an audit, and I would welcome an audit both ways. I know we don't have anything to hide. We are a good steward of taxpayer dollars. I would welcome having a look at our financials, and I would ask that of the county as well.
I appreciate you say you don't have anything to hide, then you would be more than welcome to sit down with our staff going forward and doing that. Also, you've made some other statements that I find highly irregular. If we were to believe your staff and the statements that you've made, that you are the only one paying for a new courthouse, and I find that absolutely hysterical, because we have gone a deep dive into every single department and every single elected official's budget, and every person in this county is paying for the courthouse. So what you have done, unfortunately, Sheriff, you've created a division of our entire public safety system, saying the courthouse is not worthy. In order to prosecute criminals, I will submit, in order to successfully prosecute the criminals that your people arrest, that your people that put in jail, our district attorney needs to prosecute them, and they need space to do that. We desperately need more courthouse, a bigger courthouse, so we can have more judges to successfully prosecute criminals in this county. It's all intertwined together, and I am so sad, I am so very sad that you have pitted the judges, the district attorney, and the courthouse against your efforts.
Chair, I am sad that you have mischaracterized my representation of us accepting the cuts the county gave to me, the $5 million that you gave to me. I proposed a budget that was balanced. I did not say we shouldered, nowhere did I say we shouldered the burden of paying for this courthouse. Nowhere.
I just respectfully disagree. I'm finished today.
Thank you.
Chair Parks, I also would like to address Chair Smith representation that we went out for a 50% increase in the levy. That is absolutely not true.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Point of
Ms.
clarification,
Lee?
Chair Parks,
No.
if I may. I just want to state for the record, so we're very, very clear, the sheriff's office employs the same chart of accounts that the entire county employs. We have from the beginning. As a matter of fact, we just restructured our chart of accounts because we brought on parole and probation. We provided all the documentation necessary and needed and did the accounting work and provided it to county finance to be good partners so that that would offset some of their workload. We use the same accounting system. Everyone in the county uses PeopleSoft. That's the general ledger. We use it. We also use OpenGov for budgeting. That is the county system. We use it. There is nothing that we are not doing and not complying with in terms of accounting. The reconciliation, we're working through some issues with county finance. There's some systems that are not in place. We want to collaborate and be good partners, and we're trying to get accounting at the detailed level that we require in order to submit our reporting for federal dollars, state grants, and other local funding. Thank you.
Ms. Lee, Commissioner West, and then Commissioner Schrader. And I would hope that these are new questions, new comments, new information. There's been a lot of it that we've gone over several times today, and hopefully there's some understanding in that. So if there are things we still need to probe for, then let's do it. Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Okay, a concern that I heard was about using actual budgeted figures for this budget in regard to medical and other expenses. And I don't see how that could be accomplished because...
Can you move your microphone closer?
Pardon?
Move your microphone a little closer.
Because there were actually new employees that would not have been allocated in the past year. So I think looking at the budget from the view of past expenditures in this budget doesn't really work very well. And maybe a different standard would have to be applied as new employees come on. But the other thing that I'd really like to see, and I haven't seen in any of the records, is any kind of a potential budget for the levy. What's going to happen with the levy dollars, say, over the next 5 years, and that would be a significant factor. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner West?
Thank you, Chair Parks. We heard just a lot of numbers about hiring specifically deputies. I believe I know of 9 experienced deputies right now that are leaving Clackamas County for other jurisdictions. Roughly, I believe it's 40 to 45 lost positions over the last 2 to 2.5 years, not including retirement. These losses include deputies that are leaving for whatever reason, and then also recruits that didn't make it. So as we talk about we're hiring, I think looking at net matters. So are we getting a net gain? Are we treading water? Or are we having a loss in qualified and competent and ready to go deputies within our rank and file? So are we just spinning our wheels? Or are we getting, as Commissioner Savas and others have alluded to, the people we need to keep our community safe in those roles? And so that looks like the loss of deputies, Sheriff, since you were elected about 2.5 years ago, approximately in that range. So I just want to make sure that we are actually growing and building that workforce as necessary.
Commissioner West, I don't know where you're getting that information, but I have data that says differently. So since I took office, 36 sworn have retired. I'm certainly happy for them, and I believe Mr. Rhodes was one of those, happily retired. So it is a 10% of my office that have retired. And this is not an anomaly. This is happening across the state, across the nation, that record number of law enforcement officers are retiring. And we all know why. And we do exit interviews with every single person. We also have a rehire program. 20 of those have come back to work for me. And it's a great program. And I'm happy the legislature continued that, the PERS legislation that will allow that to happen, because quite frankly, that's a lifesaver for us to retain the experience while we try and staff up and train new officers. So you may ask, are there other folks? You said there's 9 that are looking to go to other jurisdictions. There's various reasons for it. The folks that have left, we know that many of them went to Idaho, they went to Arizona, they went other places that they feel more respected as law enforcement officers. And to retain our folks, we need to pay them what they are worth. And we've had those conversations, and I know you, so to me, if we want to retain our personnel, we need to pay them what they're worth. We need to be competitive with our agencies that are around us. We are all competing after the same exact people. Our people, I know from talking to other sheriffs who have hired our people, love our people. And they love them because they're highly trained, they have integrity, and they do a great job. We need to keep those people. We need to keep them.
Really, because there's no daylight, I feel like, between us on this, Sheriff. I just want to know if we're treading water, if we're making the gains. And I think there's the things that are intangible, Sheriff, that you're right, that you alluded to. The one critique I'll have is that you've heard again is that, and Commissioner Savas said this, is that it hurts to be an attractive culture when all people are hearing is that we're laying off and cutting when it's been guaranteed from this board we're not. However, though, I want to know that, like, what do you need, I guess, or where are we at on a net gain, net loss, or are we, like, how do we, it's a complicated problem we got to solve. I guess that's the bigger question.
So we know what's happening in law enforcement. This is a difficult time. It's been a difficult 3 years. And we are coming back from that. We are finding, and we are an employer of choice. And we are finding quality candidates. We are not dropping our standards. We are making strides. With that, we have issues with the state academy that is backed up. They're seeing numbers they've never seen. They never could have guessed that they'd have to train the number of officers and deputies across the state, that they're going to be hopefully adding a night academy. Right? I tried to host a regional academy to help solve the state's problem. It was not something that we could do because of the curriculum for DPSST. But our staffing challenges are nothing new. I think we're doing better than other sheriffs that I know, because unfortunately for them, we are taking their people. They want to come and work for Clackamas County. So you as a commission and a commissioner is to champion what a great place it is to work here and to be a deputy here and to support the deputies. And what I'm hearing today, I'm heartened by the conversation that we're having here. And they just need to be compensated. We are competing after the same people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lee, did you put your flag back up, your card, or is it still up from before? Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure as I go through this list. And Mr. Karn, I see you. We got a couple in front of you. So Commissioner Schrader, and then Commissioner Savas, and then Mr. Karn.
Okay, are you going first, or am I going first? Oh, okay. Well, I was going to kind of try to help wrap this up a little bit, giving you some historical knowledge. Let me put this down. Conversations about the sheriff's budget since I've been here, and I think I've probably been one of the longest serving commissioners with a break in between. This is not the first time that we have had extremely intense, controversial, difficult conversations. So I just want to normalize that. And some years are easier than others. This is a difficult year for many reasons. And I'm not taking this conversation lightly. And I may be repeating myself from yesterday. But what we have here is failure to communicate. And I think we all know where that quote came from. And to me, the whole crux of the situation seems to be on budgeting processes, methodologies, and philosophies. That's what this whole conversation seems to really totally be about with me. It's not right or wrong. It's perspective based on the organizational culture, what the agency does, so on and so forth. That's where the disconnect lies. Because what I hear and see, and I've been taking a lot of notes, what I hear and see is that what you're trying to communicate from the sheriff's office is that, well, you're different. There's different ways to look at this. This is a different kind of job than, let's say, someone in DTD, organizational culture, what your mission is, so on and so forth. And what I'm hearing from our folks is, we get that, but we want to try and unify and restructure so everybody's on the same page with how they budget. And the difficulty is that you've got one way, we've got another way, and we did instruct Gary, for what it's worth, folks, we did instruct Gary to try and pull this together in a way where we would organizationally structure things. So he's really just doing his job, just as you are. I would like to take a look, as Commissioner Shull says, at this document, and I'd like to get some more clarity from you, sir, about what you were talking about. I didn't have this in front of me, but I would be willing to see the comparison. I commit with my colleagues here, who are all public safety supporters, come hell or high water, we will make sure that your boots on the ground are funded, okay? We don't have to decide that right this minute. We're not going to solve this right now because it's organizational change, and it's hard and it's difficult, and Commissioner Smith said that as well. So I'm just going to suggest that, Jamie, after you, we move on. I think that the commissioners need to get together and look at this. I think we all have to treat each other respectfully. I appreciate what this financial staff has done. I'm sorry that the staffs you don't seem to be communicating well with each other. I don't know if we can fix this. If we can't, we will pass a budget, and then if the budget needs to be fixed, that will happen, and that's basically what I say. And the last comment I'd like to make is personal. Look, my daughter's a prosecutor. She's probably one of the most popular lawyers that where she works, that law enforcement works with. She puts people in jail. The people who are rapists, people who are child abusers, people who, beat each other up, and violent criminals. So I'm well aware what her role is and the need for a courthouse, and I'm well aware of what your role is, because you are the folks that have to go in and support those folks that prosecute bad people who have done bad things to our constituents and our people. So I get that from that perspective. So I think with that, I think we should, Jamie, after you, let's move on. We'll do more work on this, and I've taken copious notes. And I'd like to see if we could do this a little more peace in our time, possibly. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. Commissioner Savas, and then Mr. Karn.
Yeah, so I just want to just confirm a communication I just shared earlier today with the legal counsel. And the question I asked legal counsel, is there a legal requirement to fill the general fund positions first? His answer was no. The second question, is there a legal requirement to not assign internal sheriff admin cost equivalently proportionally to ELED and the levy, or the levy? And the answer is no. So I think we're just hung up on whatever internal philosophies we have. And I think that it appears really the results are by not spending these dollars here creates an artificial deficit here, which is not willingly being either recognized or being shared, or in the interest of public safety, to fund all the things that are there. The resources are there. It appears to me the resources are there. We're just playing hardball, or we're not playing nice in the sandbox, or whatever it may be. But I agree with Commissioner Schrader. It's a failure to communicate, but I also believe it's a failure to collaborate. And I hope that we can collaborate, whether it's, again, what I said yesterday with regards to whether it's mediation or bringing in experts. Let's just bring common standard accepted practices that are modern day and do this in a way, sure, each of these budgets are going to be unique for the sheriff's office. We don't pretend to be the experts in that. But from a budgeting standpoint, and assigning the budgeting, I think that's where we can do better. We have bigger fish to fry. The people out there need the help. It just seems that we just have that responsibility, be grown-ups in a room and sort this out. That's my comments.
Thank you very much.
Chair Park, I need to respond to that. So the entire year, the county finance team has been asking me to spend the levy dollars first, before the general fund obligation. And I went to county council, and we asked that very question, because the levy is not a grant. You don't expend those dollars first. Those are for specific things, additional law enforcement services, not in lieu of, not instead of the general fund. And it is a philosophy, it's my philosophy as sheriff and my commitment to voters to use the levy for its intended purposes.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question about process before we go to you, Jamie. Is that okay? I thought I heard Administrator Schmidt say something about District Attorney Wentworth would be available on Zoom to meet with us. Did I hear that, or did I imagine that? So I'm wondering if he's kind of like hanging out, waiting for us to get to
He's
him.
on Zoom, but all the electeds know that we're going to continue tomorrow morning if we don't finish today, so.
Okay, all right. So he's next on our list, but I know he's not here today physically.
It's up to him if he
so-
wishes to go next. We can ask him.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Mr. Kern,
Sheriff Brandenburg. Am I on there?
turn yourself on.
As it relates to competitive pay, we talked about it just a minute ago. Do you know by chance where the sheriff's office rates by comparison in the metro area? You know, if we were rating 8 different agencies, where we might fall?
So I'm looking back to my Undersheriff
Sure.
Ashby, who does not want to be up here. Just saying.
Good, I'll ask him lots of questions.
Perfect.
For most of my career, so. I don't think we are currently in contract negotiations with our partners with the county, and so with the CCPOA, and those things are kind of held in confidence during an ongoing negotiation. So unfortunately, I can't answer your question, so I've walked all the way up here to tell you that. Apologize.
All right, well, last question then too, and you might want this one. So do you maintain an open lateral hire process? Is that something that's just ongoing?
Yes, sir. We both do for laterals, and this year we did a new thing where we did lateral detectives, where we actually stole some detectives from outside agencies that came over directly as detectives, and we were able to fill in some of our gaps that way. So these are some of the outside-the-box things we're doing to filling up our staff.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I know that lateral process it brings cost savings. It's good. It's good for the organization. Again, go ahead, Sheriff.
Well, I wanted to, what segues into the need to staff up our staff, to staff the courthouse. The county administrator and I have had many talks about this, and we're going to be required at 12 to 14 deputies. I know that we're looking at that, and that is a cost that is, one, a cost, two, is recruiting and bringing them online when the new courthouse opens so that we can staff it safely. So outside the box thinking, like the detective laterals, absolutely helps us. We get people, it costs us less, and we got some really fantastic folks who are now our detectives with, I think, a median 15 years of service, right, Jesse? About 15 years of experience that they brought to us from other agencies.
Okay, great. Thank you, and it's good to hear that. And again, thank you and your staff for all being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your time today. It was a very worthwhile discussion, and our commitment is to working with county finance to create efficiencies and have a good working partnership. That is absolutely our goal. Thank you.
So Administrator Schmidt, with about a half hour, 35 minutes or so left, may I ask you what you would recommend as far as the next department head?
We have 30 minutes left today. There are 4 elected officials yet to present. It's up to you if you want to take a short break, if you want to power through, but we're ready to go forward if you'd like to move forward.
Let's power through.
Yeah.
Can we take 5?
That works for me, too. Thank
Yep.
you. Appreciate
I want to
that.
go
Okay,
home.
District
let's take a
Attorney
break.
Wentworth
Let's
is
go.
online, but has asked permission to speak to you from Zoom today. He's online right now. If you're willing, he'll do it from Zoom.
There he is. Yeah, let's do that.
John, can you say something so we can hear you?
Yes, can
We
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you and we can see you. Go ahead, please. John Wentworth, District Attorney.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. I'm inside my car. I look like a district attorney on top. I'm actually wearing jeans underneath, just in full disclosure. I want to tell you, I know this has been a tough afternoon. I'm sorry that that's been the case. I'm going to be brief. I know people have probably even larger bladders than I have and would like to take care of that. So I guess my comments I'll keep to this, that this has been a challenging year in the district attorney's office for many, many reasons. Almost all of them have to do with issues at the state level that include a number of cases that have come back on appeal that we're having to retry because of a U.S. Supreme Court decision and Oregon Supreme Court decision that resulted in that. We've also, in a good way, we now have, I think every police agency in Clackamas County has a body-worn camera system for all of their officers. And so while that's fantastic evidence to have, it's been challenging to ramp up and make sure that we have the resources in place in my office to deal with that additional evidence that we have to process and provide to the defense. And we've had a dramatic increase in public records requests. As you may know, the district attorney not only handles requests that come to our office requesting public records, but also we handle the appeals when public agencies deny public records requests. We had to deal with expungements and commutations and pardons from the governor. So these are additional things that a prosecutor, the reason I'm trying to point this out, we have the regular work that we normally do, but these were things that were kind of layered on top of the work we would otherwise do. And I just want to say, because I know it's been a challenging afternoon, you can be proud of the women in our district attorney's office who's doing that work, getting it done in a timely fashion. And I couldn't be more proud of my staff. One of the things that you know we've talked a lot about growth and budgets and whatnot. I have no complaints. I have been working with the county administrator and he has demonstrated his commitment to public safety to me. I think that's evident from his sharing that there are 3 positions that we've added to my staff this year. When we started this year, we had only grown by 5 FTE in the past 15 years. In other words, we only have 5 more people working in my office now than we had in 2008. And yet we're getting all that work done. We had to have additional staff. The county administrator heard that and has stepped up and put a process in place by which we can get some relief that's sorely needed. So I'm immensely grateful for that. The one thing I would be remiss if I didn't say, we have to have this courthouse. And there are people in the room right now, I believe, who absolutely know that. And there are people in the room who may not know that. We are at the end of a building that is almost 100 years old. My office had a sinkhole that was forming outside my office. I'm not on the ground floor, I'm in the basement. And there was a sinkhole forming on my end of the courthouse, and on the other end, a year ago, 2 years ago, the bank of the Willamette River was 36 inches away. It's much closer now. So we're building a courthouse. I know we're going to have it in 2 years. We can't wait. But I have to tell you that a courthouse is essential to public safety. It's critical. That public safety does not begin when a Clackamas County Sheriff's deputy arrives on scene and end when someone's in the back of a patrol car. That begins the process. And that work is done primarily, almost exclusively within a courthouse. So having a courthouse is a public safety issue. We are all being asked to step up to help fund that, to take it out as having taxpayers pay even more money for a courthouse. The state is stepping in to provide hundreds of thousands of dollars for that process. So is the county, but it's essential. It's critical. We can't have a criminal justice system unless there's a courthouse to put people in. We don't have enough courtrooms in our current courthouse, which means we don't have enough judges to process the cases that we have. We're currently putting out about 5 criminal trials a week. That's not enough to keep up. We have to have more resources from judges, the ability to process cases more quickly. You've heard the phrase, justice delayed is justice denied. That's absolutely true. So we need to get these cases through. And I have a commitment to ensuring that the courthouse gets built and provides the services that Clackamas County deserves. And I appreciate all the work that's being done and the difficult conversations that are being had to ensure that that courthouse is something that we can be proud of and something that will serve the county for decades to come. So I just want to leave that on kind of a high note because, as I said, I know it's been a difficult afternoon, and I appreciate everyone's attention. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have, though.
Thank you, John. I don't see any questions that people might have to ask you. It seems all pretty clear cut. Commissioner Smith would like to say something.
John, I want to thank you for your support of the courthouse. I was remiss in not adding in my earlier statements that the funding we're getting from the state of Oregon is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where they have agreed to pay for 1/2 of the cost of a $330 million courthouse. We have also offered Sheriff Brandenburg an opportunity to build a new jail after this is finished, and we are very serious about that also. There is a pathway to a new jail. And unfortunately, we have not had any conversations about that. So when you say that the courthouse is part of a public safety system, you just reiterated and supported what we had been saying earlier. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you. He's gone. Bye. That ended quickly. And then we'll go on to the next one, the assessor's office.
If Assessor Rueda, please come forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Real quickly, a month and a half ago or so, Gary had a meeting with all of the EMT personnel, and I had a question or made a comment, and his response, although half-heartedly, was something to the effect of, well, if you want to change positions, Assessor Rueda, for a day or so, I'll do that with you. And at the time, I said, yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. And I would like to say on the record now, no, I do not want to trade ever. So you can have that. I'll stay the assessor. Thank you.
And that was said with good intentions and somewhat joking, but thank you.
Yes. Hello, members of the Clackamas County Budget Committee. My name is Bronson Rueda, and I am the county assessor. I want to thank you for taking on the task of analyzing and approving the county budget this year. I also want to thank County Administrator Gary Schmidt, Finance Director Elizabeth Comfort, and Budget Manager Sandra Montoya and Cindy Becker, and staff for all their time working with me and my budget analyst to get us to this point. And for example, I want to especially point out Sandra Montoya, although I think she's not here. No, excuse me, Elizabeth. You gave me a call about 3 or 4 weeks ago on a Friday, and I appreciate that. I was working out in the yard, and I find that relaxing, but that day I was thinking about the budget the whole day, and you gave me a call to let me know some good news in that, and your purpose, you said, was to make sure that I had a good weekend, with that good news, and it did. It made things better for me on that day and for the weekend, so I appreciate you taking the time on a Friday. I believe you're a day off? Never, don't have any days off, to give me that call, so thank you. I recognize all the hard work and tough decisions you all have made. I also appreciate allowing time for me to present information today, and I welcome any questions that you may have. Earlier today, you reviewed my budget and had a chance to ask questions. There were none. So for this presentation, I plan on keeping it short, and I will just cover 4 items that I think should be on your radar. The first one is A&T's budget reduction. Post-COVID, my department has had higher than normal vacancy, which created higher than typical vacancy savings. Gary's budget message stated there remains a persistent gap between employer needs and the supply of candidates. And this is certainly the case for my office. This fiscal year, we are projected to return over $1 million in general fund due to natural vacancy savings, which is about 10% of our budget. And the previous fiscal year was a similar scenario. Right now, we have 8 vacant positions out of 61 FTE. The reductions to my fiscal year 24 budget should be attainable with anticipated natural vacancy savings. If natural vacancy savings is less than anticipated, I may be back before this committee with a supplemental budget request. Going forward, I'm very hopeful our vacancy rate and vacancy savings will normalize in future budget cycles. Number 2, the core ANT software system. I want to remind you, and for those that are new, get you up to date, that we have a continued need for a new core system. We have had our current software since 1999. Our system does the job, but technology has advanced, and there are other systems that have better amenities that may allow us to do more and create workflow efficiencies. As an alternative to a new core system, we are also engaged in discussions with our core system vendor of modernizing our current system. In the next month or so, we will roll up our sleeves with the procurement department, and Ryan Rice, is he officially back on board? Is that okay? That's good news. That's good news. And TS to draft an RFP and get the procurement process started. Depending on timing of obtaining a new core system or modernizing our current system, I may be back before this committee with a supplemental budget request. Number 3, appeals work. Historically, my department had a part-time contract appraiser on staff with a high level of appraisal expertise dealing with complex property types, writing narrative appraisal reports, and testifying in tax court. That contract appraiser retired about 3 years ago. Subsequently, about a year later, his $77,000 yearly salary was removed from the A&T budget in order to save money, with the understanding the money would be available to us for appeal work if we needed it. The last couple of years, we have been fortunate to not be in a position to need an outside contract appraiser. However, if we have a complex appeal where going to trial is required, I may be back before this committee with a supplemental budget request. There's a theme here. The fourth one, last one. For the next budget process, I plan to ask for additional FTE. Mentioned in prior presentations, my department is about 11 FTE below the Oregon Department of Revenue's recommended staffing level for Clackamas County, which is determined by many factors, including number of accounts and yearly workload. I still need to analyze how many positions are needed and what work will be done with those extra positions. But I wanted to keep this on your radar, that we are understaffed, not just with our current vacancy level, but with our total budgeted FTE. And hearing John, DA Wentworth, say that they have added 5 FTE since 2008, I don't know what his total FTE count is. Ours is 61, and I'll have to do the research, but I'm pretty sure we've only added 3 or 4 FTE since about that same time period. So we're in a similar position of not adding a lot of positions, but having increased workload every year with more and more property going on the tax roll and construction in the county. So that's all I have. Are there any questions?
I don't see anybody with any cards up. So you covered everything very nicely, very well. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for spending your time with us.
You're welcome.
Thanks for you and all what your staff do on behalf of the county. It's appreciated.
Yeah.
Right. You're welcome, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah. Next up is our county treasurer, Brian Nava.
Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you. Brian Nava, Clackamas County Treasurer. I'm going to run through my slides. Tony, you don't have to pull them up if you don't want to, but you guys can reference them later if you want. I'd just like to say thank you to the Budget Committee, the board, Gary Schmidt, and staff for being here today. I know it's a long day. I appreciate especially the public members. I know I've had a coffee with a few of you guys, and it's a pleasure that you guys are here, and I appreciate you putting in the time for sure. First, I'd like to acknowledge my staff and my colleagues. Without the work of them and my colleagues within our office, and our mission and Clackamas County mission cannot be achieved. Our office is a staff of 7, so it's quite a small office, and we're short one. They've been doing just some heroic work over there to keep the lights on and keep everything moving. And as you'll be able to see in our slides, we've achieved all of our goals almost 100% of the time. Actually, I should say generally 100% of the time, which is awesome when you're down one person. As always, I'm extremely excited to talk to you about the Treasurer's Office in whatever capacity, as I know a significant portion of this Budget Committee has experience in local government work or in accounting. You know it's not very often that accountants are asked to talk about accounting work, so I appreciate being here today. The mission of the Treasurer's Office is to provide treasury, investment, and audit services to the public of Clackamas County so they can trust that their funds are safeguarded, and to the taxing districts and departments of Clackamas County so they can efficiently and effectively provide services to their customers. And 11.2, and there's my staff right there, by the way. As Gary outlined this morning, the county and its 8 service districts have a budget of nearly $1.8 billion with a B dollars. Generally speaking, all funds collected by the county are held safely and securely by the Treasurer's office until they are ready for distribution. Our budget and goals align with and support all of the county's strategic priorities, but especially the county's goal of building public trust through good government. There were many major accomplishments for our small but mighty office. In the interest of time, I'll just highlight a few. Tax distribution. In addition to the $1.8 billion county and service district budget, there's also over $1 billion in property taxes collected. This continues to be distributed timely, accurately, and completely to the over 120 taxing districts of Clackamas County by the Treasurer's Office. Without the timely distribution of these funds, your police, fire, cities, school districts, libraries, and even Clackamas County could not continue operations. Also, I'd like to highlight alternative collateralization options. The Treasurer's Office, in conjunction with working with the State Treasurer's Office, County Council, Health and Housing and Human Services, the Sheriff's Office, and our local businesses are going to be the first local government in the state of Oregon to use the alternative form of collateralization outlined in Oregon Revised Statute 295. We are working to become more business-friendly. We also hope we can provide a template for all local governments to use in the state of Oregon, and I'll work with Stephen after this to see how we can charge them for that template that we developed together. Okay, not very many laughs on that. I thought it was a little funnier than that. All right, fair enough, fair enough. Anyways, no, but it is a Herculean effort. We work with the State Treasurer's Office and Andrew Naylor almost daily to try and work this out with the Sheriff's Office and Health and Human Services. It was something that came up in the state legislature in 2021 to be more business-friendly, and it's been, it has not been implemented in the state of Oregon. So for us to use that alternative collateralization provides more safety of our funds while still being business-friendly to our vendors throughout the county. Translation services, internal audit has developed and began using a translation notice on all audit reports. This enhances accessibility and transparency for Clackamas County stakeholders and community members. Thanking the Equity Inclusion Office, Public Government Affairs, and the Leadership Academy for their assistance and help in this venture. Tab 11.3. Real-time improvements. The internal audit facilitated real-time process improvements by proactively issuing a mid-engagement management letter. Among other things, this allowed more residents to receive emergency rental assistance services. You can see this internal audit report, as well as all our internal audit reports, on the internal audit website at any time. That's available to the public at any time, 24/7. Money management program. We worked and are working with social services and the county's housing authority to upgrade their ability to assist the county's most vulnerable populations, including our seniors and people with disabilities, on managing their finances. This is a huge win for our most vulnerable populations to be able to work with them. Slide 11.4. In general, the Treasurer's Office Treasury line of business is meeting or exceeding our performance Clackamas goals. We have highlighted just a few on this slide. It's important to keep in mind most of our functions are required by state statute or federal requirements, and we have little room for noncompliance. For example, we would not want the public's money to be adequately and legally collateralized 75% of the time. or for our taxing districts to receive their tax distribution from our office timely only 80% of the time, we demand and expect 100% compliance from our office, and we achieve that year after year after year. I am truly blessed to work with such a dedicated group of people. 11.5. County Audit Executive Jody Cochran and Senior Auditor Kathy Young continue doing a fantastic job in our internal audit function. We're generally hitting every benchmark we've set in conjunction with administering the county's Good Government Hotline, providing consulting services throughout the county, and attending or being part of various committee meetings. It is really incredible output that they're doing for a staff size of 2. Tab 11.6. The Treasurer's Office's mandated services and budget were generally highlighted by County Administration this morning. I haven't gotten a chance to deep dive into the slides we received last night, but my initial review seems to indicate that the slides here match what was provided to us last night. Tab 11.7. Approximately 80% of our costs are for personal services, while 20% of our costs are for materials and services and allocated costs. Tab 11.8 through 11.10, I'll kind of skip through and let you guys peruse at your leisure, and feel free to ask any questions if you do. But I did want to highlight tab 11.11. Essentially what happened with our budget is we increased our budgeted charges for services revenue and reduced our expected material and services costs in conjunction with the reduction we received in our general fund. It's important to note we did not increase the charges for services fee. It was just budgeted to receive more in the fee in the next fiscal year. So, because that can be a little confusing, I read that to my wife, and who is a lot smarter than me, and she said, "So what, Brian? So what are you trying to say here?" And what I had talked when I talked to Gary and Stephen a couple weeks ago as well, and I think this will work out for the next year. And in looking at the economic forecast that came out on May 17th by the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis, and looking at my crystal ball, I think it will likely work out for the next 2 or 3 years. What I want you to take from this slide is that I worry about in the next 3 or 4 years having to come back to you, County Administration, and asking for more general fund support because our charges for services revenue is no longer keeping up with expenses, and it's actually less than what we had received in the past. So no controversy here in terms of next year's budget, probably no controversy in the next 2 or 3 years' budget. Just wanted to kind of put the committee and everybody else on notice that I do see in 3 or 4 years, especially after looking at the Oregon Office of Economic Forecast, planning on a slight recession with a soft landing, that could impact our charges for services revenue. And at that point, and I appreciate it because Gary has said this to me a couple times in the past, that we've always worked collaboratively to make sure we have a soft landing as well in the Treasurer's Office as well as the rest of the county. But I did want to make sure that was publicly said to the Budget Committee that yes, the Treasurer's Office is good for this year, probably good for the next 2 or 3, but somewhere between 3 and 4, I could see that being a little more troubling and having to have a tougher conversation with County Administration and the Budget Committee. And I will defer a little bit to Gary to see if you have any iterations, because I threw your name out there a lot, Gary, and I don't want to speak for you as well. So.
Thank you. My commitment to every elected official and department is, we budget year to year. So as your needs change, as the revenue changes, as the world changes, I will work with you collaboratively to find a way to fund your essential operations. You are a mandated service, Brian. You're mandated, so we must provide coverage to his office, and I'll work with you collaboratively on what that looks like year to year.
Good. Thank you. And I don't see any cards up, so I thank you very much for being here with us this afternoon, for kind of spending the day with us. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, take care.
Thank you for all you do and your staff.
Yes.
Pass on our appreciation.
And I'm jealous of your parking spot.
And next up is our judge, Karen Brisbane. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Parks, members of the committee, Administrator Schmidt. I have 9 minutes to talk, is that correct? Since you're recessing.
I think we'll go over a little bit, so take the time you need, Judge.
I don't need that much time. Our budget has been presented, and I have no comments about the budget, but some of the, having been here all afternoon, I do have some comments about things that I've heard. Justice Court is also part of the public safety team. We're one of the public safety departments. Our location is set by statute, so we will not be over here in the new courthouse. Some people have been asking me about that. Justice courts cannot be located in the county seat, and Oregon City is the county seat. So you'll find us over in Happy Valley at the Clackamas Town Center Mall location. We were lucky enough to have our space designed by a national group that focuses on design, so we have a great space. I have a great staff. We started in 2010 with 10 staff. We now have 4 staff. So you don't always have to increase staff as you're moving through and increasing the volume of cases that you hear. What we did was we were able to have a great manager who likes, Laura Anderson behind me, who likes to develop technology along with our technology services department, and we're letting the technology do the work for us. So we've moved from 10 staff to 4 staff, which gives savings, plus we've increased our cases. And we work collaboratively with Circuit Court, who will be in the new courthouse. We've taken over all the violations, so any violation that's filed in the county comes to our court. And that goes for, well, right now, fish and wildlife. You might see somebody that was showing off that they caught a fish that wasn't fin clipped. Those are the types of cases in addition to traffic. This morning we had somebody on I-205 at 134 miles an hour in court. So those are the types of cases that we hear, but we're hearing all the violations, so that helps Circuit Court. They can then focus on the other cases that they have. Also, we are hearing most or the majority of the landlord-tenant eviction matters. The legislature has changed the laws about every 6 months, and one of the first bills they passed this session before they stopped working at passing bills was the law that changed the eviction process. So that affects what we're doing. We're changing our processes. So in October 22, we had a change. Now March 29th of this year, we had a change, and we're adapting to that. It requires additional work and processes, but we're working through that. And we're still coming out of COVID as well, so our caseload is starting to increase as more officers are out in the workforce and citing people to our court. Unless there are questions, I just wanted to update you on some of the things that we're doing and let you know that we're part of the public safety team too.
Yeah, no, great, thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Shaw?
Judge, if we want to come and visit you, where at Clackamas Town Center are you located?
We're behind JCPenney in an individual strip mall.
Northeast corner of the property.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
North of the light rail station.
Yeah, all right, good, thanks. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Judge, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Share with our staff our appreciation to your staff and yourself for all you do.
Thank you. Administrator Schmidt, we seem to have come to the end of our elected officials and our listening to the budget message and the budgets. And are we ready to recess until we're here for the public hearing?
That's 6 o'clock.
You have a public hearing tonight at 6 p.m. in this room, and we have a dinner recess here coming up shortly. Before you go, though, I would like to ask if any committee members have information you would like from the staff to have for you tomorrow, would you please tell us now, and/or email or tell us tonight during the break so the staff can have it ready for you to go tomorrow morning. But on the spot, is there anything, information or things you'd like, commissioners or budget committee members, before tomorrow morning?
So as we discuss the budget tomorrow, if there's a question where a department head or an elected official could answer a question or something, I mean, is that something that's going to be available, or is it just going to be our little group? Or
I've asked all appointed directors to be available. I've encouraged elected officials to be available. But again, if you could give us your request tonight, we can tell them in advance so they're prepared to address. But they will also be available if you have something on the spur of the moment tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. All right. With that, we are in recess until 6 o'clock.